As we get our event started today, we would like to say a very big thank you to PayPal for sponsoring the event, and to let you all know, PayPal Developer, the group behind technology innovation at PayPal, has launched its global Battle Hack series for social good. Take your hackathon skills into a battle against other developers to become the representative of your city and country in the World Finals. Build innovative projects around the themes of social good, helping to solve the challenges that your city faces every day. The winner of each city will be flown out to San Francisco for the World Finals, where they'll represent their team, city, and country in the fight for the $100,000 grand prize. Sign up now for your city battle hack at battlehack.org. Again, thank you, PayPal. Okay, folks, as we kick off the event today, we'd like to start off with a little housekeeping to help you get the most out of today's webcast. You'll want to open your group chat widget if you haven't already done so. This is where we can interact with each other during the event and where you can submit your questions for Bill. We find that our audience usually has a lot of good knowledge to share, so we encourage you all to chat freely during the event. However, if you have questions for Bill, please preface them with a capital letter Q so we know that they're for him and we can make sure we see it for Q&A. You can also open, move, and resize any of the other widgets. If you'd like to tweet from the Twitter widget today, you might need to give it permission to access your account. The Twitter widget will automatically append the event's hashtag to your tweet so you don't have to. And today, our hashtag is FluentConf, all one word. If you should have any trouble during the event, please take a look at your help widget. If you continue to have problems, just post it in the group chat and one of our staff will help you right away. For choppy audio or stalled visuals, please try refreshing your window. And remember, the best thing you can do for a good audio stream is to close any apps that could interfere. People always ask, so we'd like you to know we are recording today's webcast, and we will have the archive ready usually within 48 hours. And folks, at this time, it is my pleasure to turn the program over to Bill for his presentation. Hello, Bill.
Hey, how's it going? All right, well, I just want to welcome everybody. I know we got a great group of folks actually all around the world, and I'm really excited to get a chance to share with you some of the technologies that we've been using to sort of turn PayPal, I'd say, upside down, and Node.js being one of the central pieces of that. Starting in, let me just pop forward on the slide here as I learn how to use this. I came from Netflix before I came to PayPal. I was at Netflix about 4 years. And you're looking at 4 different experiences on your screen right now that we launched at the same time for the PS3. So we'd actually ported WebKit to the PS3, which allowed us to create HTML5 experiences so we could more rapidly deploy multiple experiences. It's interesting, when this actually launched, Mashable, I believe it was Mashable and TechCrunch both came out with an article on the same day when the PS3 experience launched and said, wow, this is really a great experience from Netflix. But the humorous thing was they were both looking at 2 different experiences. That's because we actually launched 16 different variations, 4 different complete experiences with variations in each one of the ones you see there. And the reason we did that, and we would do that sort of thing in Netflix, was we really believed in build, test, learn, or build, measure, learn. I'll be talking some about lean startup and lean UX and lean engineering today. I'll be talking about Node.js. I'll be talking about Dust.js, which is a JavaScript technical language. I'll be talking about a lot of technologies today. But what I want you to understand is that my venture here the last year and a half at PayPal has not been about specific technologies or coming in to champion a specific technology. I actually came in with a fairly blank slate of which way we might go. But what I didn't come in with a blank slate on was I was not going to compromise on the idea that we had to get to a build, measure, learn system. Because at PayPal, at Netflix rather, what had happened was an epiphany. And this epiphany was because of the rapid amount of change that we were always doing with our UIs. About a year in, I realized that we actually had to design our technology for volatility. we actually had to consider throwawayability. Now this is really upsetting to me because, I've been doing software since the early 80s, actually, started as a game developer on the Macintosh in 1984-85, or one of the first games of the Mac, and I'd been focused a lot on reuse and components, which I still completely believe in. But what was disturbing to me was just how much code we actually were throwing away. Easily 90% or more of the UI bits were thrown away in a year, probably more than that. So when you start thinking about, how do you actually have a technology stack, and how do you actually support, rapid experimentation? So what I saw at Netflix was a culture of rapid experimentation. Now, you scroll that forward a little bit, and I came to PayPal. And PayPal and Netflix, especially in 2011 when I arrived here, were completely night and day experiences. Now, I knew this coming in. I didn't come to PayPal with some kind of idea that, it was already running smoothly like Netflix. I actually came to PayPal because of the challenge. I saw a company that was doing, really well financially, and I actually consulted for PayPal in 2010, so I had some idea of what some of the internal struggles were. But what I realized coming in was a few basic things. That there was a lot of roll your own mindset. Build the technology, not invent it here. Or if you took open source software, we took open source software in, and then we bastardized it. The company would change it up and make it so that, in fact, one of the technology stacks I'll talk about in just a minute, based on Java Spring, was changed up enough that it required about 20 days worth of training classes to get up to speed, which is a lot of overhead to do. The other thing I saw was this concept of a disconnected delivery experience. It's kind of a mouthful, but let me unpack that for you just for a second, because I think it's really important. Back in 1985 when I was running submarine simulation for the Macintosh Gato, the whole goal was to get this thing onto a 3.5-inch diskette, micro diskette. And so, you had to get to pixel perfection. And so everything you did was like you had to get all your bugs out, you had to get everything perfect. Now you contrast that to the world we live in with Google and Amazon and Netflix and others that are constantly changing. We may not like it sometimes, but the learning capability of being able to put something out that's not completely finished, or maybe a minimum viable product, an MVP, so that you can actually experiment with it, is a huge and powerful thing. It's completely opposite of delivering something and not having a live connection to the user. You ship a diskette, you ship a CD, or even if you allow download, or even the App Store with native apps for the iPhone is this kind of disconnected delivery experience. Because what happens is you deliver your software sort of, you shoot it in the blind over the wall to the user, and what happens? You don't know. You read reviews. You get reviews in the App Store, or back in my day, we'd have to wait for the magazines and reviews to come out on the monthly magazines. There was no internet, at that time. So this disconnected delivery experience was alive and well here at PayPal because it literally took 6 weeks to get a word changed on the site. You had a word change. It could take as much as 6 weeks. And so when you have that sort of a thing, it leads to this culture of a long shelf life, where it takes a long time to get something built, to get it up on the shelf for users to use, and a long time to take it back down. That culture of a long shelf life is exactly the opposite of a culture of rapid experimentation. And it leads to this concept of an inward focus where, I walked in the door here at PayPal, and one of the things I saw in 2011 was a lot of conversations about the machine itself. How well we were doing software, productivity, or, how long it took to get stuff out the door, and et cetera. These are all fine and good. But at Netflix, our conversations were about our members and our members' experiences, and the data and the KPIs, the key performance indicators, were all about our customer experience and what we were learning and what hypothesis we were testing. The conversation was about experimentation. The conversation was about hypotheses, not about our own internal machine that was so hard to crank. And when you have a machine that's so hard to crank like that, what happens is the product managers, the product teams themselves, they realize this train is about to leave, the station, and all the cars have been lined up, and there's only so many cars, and so they try to pack those cars as full as they can because they know that there won't be another train leaving that station for another year or two. And so you get an enormous amount of features that don't make sense and things that aren't thought out well. They all get thrown in there, and teams get put together. And it's a big death march to reach a delivery date, and then everybody goes away and does something else. And of course, the celebrations and the accomplishment at the end is that we ship something, not that we started learning, which is really what it's all about. And the other thing PayPal had going was a lot of being risk averse, and this makes sense, from a money perspective. And PayPal, in its history, had gone through a rough phase where it had a lot of instability issues, and Scott Thompson, who became the CEO, did a really good job of shoring that up, but probably did too good of a job in that it tilted it so far on the risk averse side that experience came somewhere down the line in priority with being with risk, and so accounts got put on hold more often than they should or frozen, and a lot of the horror stories you hear about PayPal, that's definitely been the case, and we're working really hard to change policies all through the company to change that, and we have been making a lot of progress on that. Still more to go though. So the big thing for me though was this tangled up technology stack. How do I get to a build, test, learn when literally to get a bug fixed, it took 47 tickets. Yes, you heard me right, 47 tickets that had to be processed, and the engineer, really their job was really to be a ticket cop, to be a process person to make sure that everything ran through, and when a ticket got stuck somewhere, you had to know the right person. And so the key to engineering here was really knowing all the right people and being able to unjam the process block. And you can understand why, if you look at even the experiences that we still have, some of the experiences we still have out there right now, if you go to PayPal, they're not very impressive. And that's because we're still unjamming this. Now, we have a lot of experiences I'll talk about in a few minutes that we're doing based on our new technology stack. That's kind of the setup, and that's where we were at. And then what happened in January 2012, I started fleshing out a new UI layer that could support rapid experimentation. I'll go into some detail of that in just a minute. And then serendipity kind of again. And in March, David Marcus became our president here at PayPal. Now, what about Scott Thompson? You may have heard the story, went to Yahoo, and a lot of news about that, and not having a degree, and yada, yada, yada. But anyway, he left in January, and in March, our CEO, John Donahoe, chose Dave Marcus. Now, Dave Marcus is interesting because we had acquired a company called Zong, which is a mobile payments company back in sometime in 2011, like August. And so David had come in and done a really great job leading some new products in mobile and heading up mobile. And so John took a real gamble on a guy who had only led companies as large as 150 people up to that point and been a serial entrepreneur, had never worked in a large corporate environment, and took over a company of 13,000 people. Brilliant move, one of the most brilliant moves that I've seen in the industry. As soon as he became president, the first thing he wanted to do was kick off a Skunkworks project to reinvent checkout. Now, checkout is not a backwater project at PayPal. It's 75 to 80% of the revenue, which is about $3.5–4 billion a year, so nothing small. So at the same time, I had been working with the lead of engineering for checkout to say, hey, let's work together to reinvent checkout. She'd approached me about it, and we were already kind of putting a team together to do this, and David came along with this. So that set the stage for us to begin to look at different ways of doing things. And we were in the midst of transformation. If you look at our PayPal.com external page is much better than the old pages. Our new developer portal is much better, and we're getting good feedback on that. We have new experiences we're rolling out in a bunch of different areas. Okay, so let's get into some of the technology and talk about what I face. Because here's what I kind of want to hopefully help you with thinking through. Because as I've talked about this, what I've heard consistently is that this is not an uncommon problem. How do you get an enterprise stack, a technology stack in large companies or even small, mid-sized companies that have grown stagnant? How do you get them to kind of leapfrog into new technologies and really accelerate your ability to put product out and actually have a much better experience for your developers too? So we had for a long time here and still have a lot of our stuff still running on the stack. We're again unwinding from all this. Running on C++, which C++ is fine. I not necessarily have a gripe there, except for the fact that the C++ was probably written in a very siloed way. On top of that, the UI was generated with XML. And so typically, a simple page, like something you see on the home page, could be 500 to 1,000 lines of this XML. So really, really complicated. A long release cycles, as I said, sometimes a word change could take as much as 6 weeks because on that C++ stack there was every 6-week kind of push. And now the new stack, when I came in, okay, great, we're going to Java and we're going to JSP. But of course, I looked at that and went, wow, okay, JSP, let's see. My first framework in JSP was 1996, 1997, something like that, 97 probably. I think that's about when, 97, 98, when JSP really came out. And I wasn't that excited about that stack, although I have been able to do some good things with it. Even at Netflix, I used JSP, Java Server Pages, but it wasn't to me the best way to go forward. But this was the new stack when I came in, was JSP Java stack. Now, so our decision, of course, was to move away from the C++ stack and move to this new stack, and the migration was already in place when I got here. Now, the thing though in this Java JSP stack, and this is not uncommon. As I've talked to companies, all kinds of companies, I've seen this over and over. Is where we take something like, say, Java, and we bastardize it. And eBay, what had happened at some point was somebody got not a brilliant idea, but thought it was a brilliant idea. That hey, writing HTML and CSS and JavaScript really is something that people shouldn't have to do because it's just not it's just kind of ridiculous, is their thought. And so why not just write it all in Java? Now I know you're probably thinking, well, that's what Google Web Toolkit does, GWT or GWT, some people call it. And yeah, I'm also not a big fan of GWT, but that's another whole story. But this was 10 times worse because you actually had to write your JavaScript in Java, which meant you couldn't have closures. You had to write your CSS in Java, which means you couldn't have cascading, which CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And you had to write your HTML DOM elements in Java. And so not even a good abstraction like GWT would have, GWT. So very, very bizarre. And then even on top of that, if you wanted to do AJAX, you had a subclass of Java class. So this terrified me when I saw this because I knew that this was just going to be a total nightmare to work with. Now, get back to what my goal is. My goal is not to change the technology stack. My goal is how do I support the ability to be able to learn as fast as possible. In particular, with this checkout project, the way we kicked it off in April of last year was a couple of folks, Eric and Jeff on my team, you can see them pictured in the middle on the second row, partnered with our product and design folks. And the first thing we did, I think I should probably back up and say the first thing we did early on in January was we started experimenting with using Dust.js. Now, Dust.js is a JavaScript templating language. You may not have heard of it. Both LinkedIn and PayPal, we both are core contributors on that. It's actually the LinkedIn fork that we use. It's like Handlebars, somewhat like Mustache, if you're familiar with those, although probably closer in cousin to Handlebars than to Mustache, since Mustache doesn't have easy ways to access properties beyond a flat model or to add helpers and other things like that. So what we found out was there was a way we could actually get Dust into our stack, and I'll show that in just a minute. But what we wanted to be able to do is iterate really, really fast. We had a goal of, well, the first 3 days we had a process up and running, we had a flow up and running for checkout. And to do that, we just pulled Node.js in, Node JavaScript. And we pulled, a typical stack like Express and Connect and all the other things like that. And we created a command line interface out of that shortly after that so that we could just scaffold our applications. But that came a little bit later. The first 3 days we were just focused on getting something up and going. And then we started getting product and design in the room the next week. An interesting thing about this was we decided, okay, look, I know that design in the past has been focused on creating Picassos in Photoshop, and has been focused on things like, like using Azure, which is a prototyping tool, which is a nice prototyping tool. But let's create a forcing function here to get engineering and design to work together. Instead of going off these tools and going off in a room for 3 or 4 days or a week or two and coming back with a delivery of a documentation, let's follow lean UX methodology. And instead of delivering documentation, let's deliver experience. And so what we did was we had a whiteboard sketching, and immediately turning that into code using Bootstrap, which is another open source toolkit, that allowed us to have even a responsive web design, and allowed us to quickly, within a few hours, actually mimic our new PayPal look and feel we were going for, and have a set of components we could use. So we did that in that second week. We actually went to usability, and then we started kind of a crazy cadence of every week, every Thursday going to usability. So our rhythm really was around a really fast pace. So we need a stack that will allow us to go rapidly from sketch to code, to allow us to do quick changes during usability studies, so that during the day, during usability, we could actually modify the experience in between participants, something that's called write or rapid iteration testing environment, and support that the spec was a living spec, the actual prototype. So, Lean UX, if you're not familiar with it, I'll recommend Jeff Gotthelf's book, Lean UX. It's really about delivering experience rather than delivering documentation. It's about design and product engineering, forming very deep collaboration across disciplines. It's about maintaining a shared understanding, and it's about getting a continuous customer feedback flowing. And that continuous customer feedback flowing is what we're getting every Thursday. And I will tell you what, when you get a team working together and they're going to usability studies every week and they're hearing customers either liking or hating what you've done, it's not a failure. It's never a failure. It's about learning. And the team gets really excited and pulls together and works in a way that was unimaginable here at PayPal before. To watch people work in a room together and literally live in those rooms together and work like a startup was I think one of the greatest joys of my career, actually, was seeing that rapid transformation. I remember Cody, our lead designer for the checkout project, a project we call Hermes. He was sketching on the board that first day, and Jeff had coded up everything he'd been writing on the board, and Cody says, well, what should I do? Should I go put this in Azure? Should I go put this in Photoshop? And Jeff said, hey, just check it out right here. It's on the laptop. Try it out. And Cody was blown away, and he's like, well, what do I do? What's my job as a designer? I mean, I'm used to putting this stuff in. He said, just design. And I think we've gotten so caught up with the artifacts and the tools and the machinery of engineering and designing and everything else that we often don't get about the job of designing engineering and designing products. We're focused more on the tools themselves. And they can be an accelerant, but they have to maintain a shared understanding. They have to allow deep collaboration, and they have to allow customer feedback to continue to flow. If they don't do that, they're worthless. So Agile does not have a brain. I like to say that because it stirs a little controversy up. But Agile by itself doesn't have a brain. You can turn the Agile machinery on, you can throw crap in it, you'll get crap out. You can throw good stuff in it, you'll get good stuff out. Hopefully not good crap. You'll get good stuff out. It's a machine, and it'll do it very incrementally and iteratively. But if you're in the middle of that machine, somewhere in the middle of a sprint, and you change a lot of direction, you're going to create a lot of confusion, and the team and Agile just can't handle that. So you need something that especially when you're in a lot of the discovery and experimentation phase for a product, trying to understand and outline it, you need a way to rapidly change and iterate. So that's what we started another Scrum team called the Lean UX Scrum team, or the Lean Team Track. And this had product design engineering in it. And we used the Node.js stack as our prototyping stack. And we used Dust.js, for our templating, so we could rapidly create our UIs. And we used, things like Require.js, for our packaging. We used Less for our CSS capabilities. But what we had in the Agile stack was to deliver the software, we needed it to be running on this Java stack, because the Java stack was the only blessed stack, besides the C++ stack, that we could launch product on at the time. So we used the Lean UX stack for both our Dust and our Node, and then on this Java stack, we had to take what was done in the Node work and redo it. In a minute, I'll tell you how we optimized around the Dust stack, which I think is pretty clever and it's given us a bunch of leverage here. So just to call out something I'm working on is called Lean Engineering. I'm writing a book in that Lean Startup series called Lean Engineering. Some of the parts of this talk really are form that thought of that. And really all it comes down to is engineering for learning, engineering for build, measure, and learn. And that's what my passion is. So the old stack, though, was not really designed for learning, as I said before. You actually had the subclass of Java controller class to do Ajax. You had to, in order to do something like a pub sub sort of concept, it was all done on the server side. Component state was tracked on the server side instead of the client side. And so anybody coming in off the street who's a web developer, a UI engineer, front-end engineer, would just be like totally blown away, like what the heck is this? What did I get myself into? So our first job was to make sure that we could actually prototype and work in a great manner. So what was our first step? Our first step was to set the UI bits free. And I think if you're going to refactor a stack, one of the kind of the easiest places to do that is probably at the UI layer. It's also the most necessary place since the UI layer in a healthy organization is probably changing more than any other parts of the stack, and it should be changing more than the rest of the stack. So set the UI bits free. And here's how we did it. We re-engineered the user interface stack so that the only artifacts in the UI layer are JavaScript, CSS, and of course images. And the way we did that was we said we're not going to use JSP, Java Server Pages, because it's a server-side only technology. We're going to choose a JavaScript templating language, and you've got a lot of choices out there. There's probably 50 or 60 or maybe even 100 now of those. We settled on Dust because we looked at the work that LinkedIn had done in evaluating 20 or 30 different templating languages. I had experience at Netflix using Mustache, and we decided that we'd be a great partner with LinkedIn, and we had similar engineering teams, we felt, and we felt having a strong kinship with another team like that would be a good synergy. So that's what we did. We chose Dust. We could have chose Handlebars, but I think I have not regretted our choice of Dust. It's been really, really good for us. And so that gave us JavaScript, CSS, and images. Now look, if your UI is only those things, you can put those on a CDN. You can package those up in a very natural way. If your UI is Java Server Pages and it's tags and you have to write it in Java, or it's Java classes that generate HTML, then that's not something that you can actually port back and forth between the client and the browser, which I think, the client and the server, which I think is really, really important. So we ditched the server-side mentality to creating UIs. Now, we still can generate UIs on the server side because we use Dust, which is a JavaScript template language. We can use that on the server side, and I'll show you that in just a minute. But no more server-side components, no more server-side managing the UI, no more jumping between two technology stacks to do that. So using JavaScript as templating languages, what happens is if you've never seen these templating languages, here's a real small snippet, a paragraph tag hello, curly brace name, close paragraph. And what happens is when you run that through the Dust compiler, it compiles down to JavaScript, much like something like JSP, Java Server Pages, compiles down to Java classes. This compiles down to a block of JavaScript code. Now, once you have that JavaScript code, if you execute that JavaScript code and you have the JSON data to go with that JavaScript code, it's going to generate your actual snippet or page. It's going to say hello Fred or hello whatever the name was. And you'd have in your JSON, you'd have a name colon, and that would be set to something like Fred, right? So the fact that this compiled in JavaScript allows it to run both on the client and on the server, and I'll show you how that happens in just a second. So having UI bits now just natural web artifacts is really powerful because it's server-side language independent. It's server-client agnostic. It's ready for the CDN. It's cacheable, and it's rapid to create. It's something that when you have somebody come in off a new hire coming off the street into the company, instead of taking 20 days worth of classes and maybe 30 or 40 days where they do the first check-in, they can check in. And we literally had this happen check-in within the first 4 hours of their starting in the company, which is a huge improvement. So this portability I kind of referenced earlier, but let me kind of show you what I mean by this. The JavaScript templating one of the things we did really, really early on in January of last year as a quick proof of concept, one of the guys, Eric Toth on my team, did a really quick, over a weekend. I sent a note out and said, hey, we should check out Dust, come in on Monday. And he had taken our Java stack, the blessed stack that we had called Sparta, and he had, because it used Spring, Java Spring supports a concept called view resolvers. So normally the view resolver might be set, say, to JSP. Well, he just added another view resolver that delegated a Dust template. Here's a text file, Dust template. Compile this down, run through the Dust compiler to JavaScript. Now, how do you execute that on the Java stack? Well, RhinoScript has been around a long time, and RhinoScript is a JavaScript engine that runs on the Java VM. So by delegating with that view resolver to RhinoScript, you can take that JavaScript template that had been compiled down from the text into JavaScript, execute it there in the Java runtime engine in the VM, and out comes HTML as it gets coupled with the JSON. And what he did from a modeling perspective, just take a POJO, a plain old Java object from the Java stack, and reran that through Jackson, which is an extension that you can add into the Spring framework that allows plain old Java objects, POJOs, to be turned into JSON models. So now you got your regular Java objects being turned into JSON. You got your Dust templates being compiled down in JavaScript and executed in the JavaScript RhinoScript engine in Java. And so it's just like parallel to what the JSPs are. So now you can actually run your JavaScript templates either on the Node.js stack, which we've been using for prototyping for this new checkout thing. And now we need to launch this. How do we launch it? Well, we've got a blessed Dust handler in this Java stack, so we can take the exact same Dust templates that we've done in our prototyping that we've been iterating on with the users really rapidly, and we actually did this for 8 weeks before the Java stack was up and ready to go. We've tried out like 10 or 12 different experiences, mobile, tablet, desktop. We can drop those same templates onto the Java stack, and they can go out the door and go live, which is pretty cool. Because then what happens is, this is again gets back to build, measure, learn. If I have a huge difference between the technology I'm using to learn with my users, and now I'm not talking about really early, because early you need to do it as simple as possible. It could be like using prototyping tools like Prototype on Paper, Pop, or Proto.io, or Azure, or whatever, real early in the conceptual phase. But I'm talking as you get closer to Agile, you get closer to the machinery where you're going to actually deliver something. You want to be a sprint or two or a few sprints ahead and running in this kind of lean model. And if you can have your stack that you're building, these more high fidelity, real experiences that you're testing with users, if that is the same stack as your production stack, it's a huge win because you don't have to rewrite it. You don't have to do something, say, in Django and then try to convert it to some kind of odd Java sort of language. So this portability both, and also the other portability is either running on the server side or the client side, because I can run this in Node.js or run it in RhinoScript, but I can also take the same Dust.js, I can deliver it to the client side in the browser. Say I've got a mobile app, and I don't want this page refresh model, but I want to pull things incrementally in. I can pull that JavaScript, that actual JavaScript code that is the compiled JS template, and I can execute that with a JSON that I've fetched in real time, or maybe I've delivered to the page, and I can, those things combine together and create the snippet to give me my interactivity. So this ability with JavaScript templating to run either on, actually run on multiple stacks and run on server or client is really, really, really powerful to enable the build, measure, learn. So we started using Node.js for our prototyping stack that enabled our rapid development, coupled with using Dust.js. And, this became really our way to get things going. And in fact, it took off so rapidly. The previous Java stack had been in development for about 5 years. It had been through an adoption phase for about 2 years. When we started launching this, we literally had all the other new products popping up within 3 to 6 months. We're all using this Node JavaScript stack. And we built an internal framework called WebCore we'll be releasing in open source soon that allows us to quickly scaffold and build our applications. So, free to turn sketch to code, forcing function, as I mentioned before, to get engineering and design working together. creating this bridge for shared understanding and close collaboration. But it requires a lot of confidence and transparency, because when you're working in the same room together and you're doing things on the fly, it creates a culture of like, hey, we're experimenting, we're trying things out. It's okay to say stupid things, okay to make mistakes, and that's a huge cultural shift that you get, from working like this. And then you can see on the whiteboard we had sketched at one point what our cadence was. Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday really working on the coding, building the full working prototypes, and then delivered usability on Wednesday at 4 o'clock, so they could get the session set up at 9 a.m. Our users would come in and our team would come together and observe and watch and code through the day as things need to be changed. Then Friday a retrospective, and then a planning session, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday started back up again. Real rapid experimentation framework. It's interesting to note that there's a number of other companies, like Google Ventures, my friend Braden Cowitz over there, they actually have a 5-day cadence, and there's at least 2 or 3 other people I know that have developed these 5-day cadences, which is a pretty fascinating way to work really fast. The second step we did was really embrace open source. One of the delights we had when we first started up this checkout project was we discovered that eBay had actually purchased an enterprise version of GitHub, and that we had GitHub internally. There weren't too many people using it at the time, just a few. And when we discovered this on day one of our adventure to create this new checkout experience, we were ecstatic, because we knew that what GitHub would unlock in the company. They had originally had ClearCase, which is the complete antithesis of GitHub. And GitHub, though, is great because it really decentralized, coding. And so here's some of the open source projects that we've been using. You can see on the slide here. For example, Bower, which is a Twitter, what was a Twitter project. Jacob and Mark Otto, and Jacob had built, I think it was Jacob Bower. And Bower is a component repository. So we have that running as a node service now internally. And when you're wanting to install our components, you just type Bower and say install header, install footer, or whatever. And you get the standard components and look and feel for PayPal, the new PayPal look and feel and apps. Less for our CSS. You could use Sass. There's others. We use Less because it worked well with with Bootstrap. Backbone for some of the client JS. Of course, underscore comes along with that, and obviously jQuery. And we've been using jQuery mobile, although we're still experimenting on mobile. What's the best approach for us at this point? I would say the other really big thing around open source is really working in an open source model. So having GitHub internal, or I would suggest to you, if you don't have GitHub Enterprise license, to do all your work on the public GitHub, but do it in a private repo. There's just something about the whole mindset of a decentralized social coding environment that GitHub gives you, that it's a forcing function to replace these centralized platform teams. Most big organizations end up with these centralized platform teams, architecture teams, that become a bottleneck if they're not careful, because anytime you take a lot of smart, clever people, put them in a room by themselves away from customers, they're going to create crap. I don't care how good they are. There's just no way you cannot do that. So the best approach is with GitHub is taking your platform code, putting it on GitHub internally or through a private repo, and allowing anybody in the company to do pull requests, to fork it and do pull requests. And that democratizes innovation. And every developer becomes encouraged to experiment and generate repos, and that's just a healthy thing within a company to have happen. And the other is to get back to open source, and we're just in the process of doing that. We're about to release some of our frameworks that we've been working on, and I think what it does for us, though, it's also a forcing function in that it makes us so that we're careful enough to put PayPal crap into stuff. The last thing, the step 3, I'll just talk about briefly, and then we'll open up the Q&A, is we've been in the process of what a project we call Kraken, and we're in the process of something we call Release the Kraken. Kraken is that's our logo. We have awesome T-shirts with that on there too. But it's really taking our Node.js prototype stack and hardening it for production. We started that in January, and by the end of next month, we'll have finished that project, and we'll have monitoring, logging, security, new content handling, locale resolution. That's not local, that's a misspelling. Analytics, authentication, of course, dust rendering, experimentation, packaging, application framework, deployment, session management, service access. Now, the reason I read all that to you, because I don't usually like to read off the slides, is that's a lot of stuff, and I was just meeting with the Strong Loop guys who are who are hoping to be the Red Hat, Linux of the Node distribution. In fact, one of the guys came from Red Hat. Some really smart guys. And we walk through all these things, and that's the kind of things they're trying to solve, to give a nice packaging of Node so that people that don't have the time to build all these things like we've had to do here can just take their like quote-unquote Red Hat version of Node. And we also have these MVC frameworks, for scaffolding, so we can do a hello world in 1 minute. We can actually, because we can install all of our components, we can have a working, nice-looking app, say, for example, doing, talking to our authentication, going through our account services, say, for example, get our account details back for a customer, and we literally have built one of those in 10 minutes, which is a far cry from the past where we were at. So really, one stack to rule them all, if you think about it. This is where we're heading. We are going to launch our wallet, new wallet experiences on both the Java stack and on the Node stack. The Node stack being a proof of concept still at this point from a production perspective. We want to, we just don't want to lean too crazy and heavy, but we want to lean as heavy as we can. So we're doing that, and it's actually, we're seeing just huge amounts of productivity gain from this. Literally, it's almost a 10x less developers that we're fielding for these kind of applications versus the old stack. Sometimes 20x less. So it's pretty crazy. And also our ability to attract talent and bring really good talent in to work on this has gone up considerably. If you're going to introduce Node.js into your organization, you got to get the camel's nose under the tent. And there's two basic ways to do this. You can start as an API proxy, a shim, for your really old services. And this is something Walmart Labs has really pioneered, and I would suggest you check out the HAPI framework, H-A-P-I, that Aaron Hammer has been building there with Ben and Dion over at Walmart Labs. Very nice. It's really great to throw a node in front of an old cranky piece of software, APIs, services, or kind of quasi-services, and turn them into real services that could be RESTful and return JSON. It's also great as a rapid prototyping stack, which is what I've illustrated here. And then moving into the tent, is finding a good proof of concept API or application to begin to scale. And doing it in parallel, of course, makes a lot of sense because you can test both stacks and find out what works, what doesn't work. And the other really big thing is you got to really have good talent. Working in Node JavaScript is different than working in even some of the Java stacks because of the asynchronous nature of JavaScript, especially in Node. And so a lot of things that we kind of think of as asynchronous, aren't quite asynchronous. You get the Node environment and you're fire forget. You can create applications that consume a lot of resources or consume a lot of compute time without realizing you're doing that, or create even race conditions. So you have to have developers who are good in that stack. But the good news though is what it does is it allows the teams to blend together. So we'll no longer have to integrate our Dust templates over in the Java stack. We'll no longer have to rewrite our controller logic that was in the Node app in the Java stack. It'll just be a continuous evolution of the product. And we'll blend the two teams together so that folks that report up actually into another organization that do the Java app layer right now will just combine together in a single agile team with my UI developers, and some of them will go deep in the stack in JavaScript, and some of those previous Java developers will come up and do JavaScript, and some may even go as high as some of the UI. So we'll have a blended team who really, at this point, they're not going to be concerned about who owns what and where, somebody reports to. So in summary, well, let's see, should I hit this? I should say that, GitHub, awesome. Bower's awesome. Require.js worked great for us. We have an internal NPM service that's awesome. We created a command line interface, for scaffolding. Les has been great for our CSS code. Backbone has worked well. We've got a JavaScript library that makes this a little easier that we'll be releasing open source. So the steps we took was we set the UI free, we embraced open source, released the Kraken. But the reason we did all that was to create a build, measure, learn environment, to create a lean startup, lean UX, lean engineering environment so that we can start getting product out really as fast as possible and iterate ourselves to a point where our products are actually really, really great and upstage our competitors and give a great experience. You can follow me on Twitter, and now I'm ready to open up for questions.
Right. Fantastic presentation, Bill. Thank you so much. And as you can imagine, we have many questions that have come in. Folks, we are at Q&A. If you have a question for Bill, please open your group chat widget, type it in, send it in, and we'll take as many as we have time for. Okay, we'll start just in the order that they were received. Java Built has a two-part question for you. Part one is, why has PayPal persisted its drudge-style simple query results interface? Part two is versus adding more value to the user on a single screen, like 5 last transactions.
Yeah, well, we're working on fixing all that. We're reinventing the merchant experience, our onboarding experience, our wallet experience. As you can imagine, we've got a lot of stuff coming down the pipe. The reason that that's persisted is because the old C++ framework was extremely hard to change anything in really long cycles, and all the things I just talked about in the conversation. Drudge style is great. I'll use that. It's if I was in a smaller crowd, I'd use the more colorful language than that because it literally has sucked. And the 5 last transactions is really a funny one because we were doing our Node app for the wallet, and we're like, why can't we just get the last 5 transactions? And it turns out that was one of the first services written, and you can give a date range, but okay, well, great. Well, if you don't get something, ask for another date range. It's a completely ridiculous mindset. But so as we create new experiences, what's happening is we're being a forcing function. We've got a great services team now in place. We've got a great platform team in place. Hugo Haas joined us from Yahoo, who is the API architect over there. So we're reinventing our services too as we speak, and that will help to fix that. Okay.
Thank you. A question from Mark. Do you allow developers to run Node.js or NPM on production hosts? If so, how to prevent runaway code changes through NPM installs?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we actually have our own NPM service running internally. We were talking about this with StrongLoop yesterday, again, the company I mentioned earlier that's trying to do the Red Hat kind of installation of Node. And what we're talking about is either providing a whitelist or a blacklist, or at least a warning message, like looking at, for example, certain licenses that we don't want to bring into the company. Having, when you do the NPM install, it goes through INPM and then it goes out to the other. We could actually check and then provide a warning to say, well, this is, there's a problem with this license, or this is a library that we blacklisted, and contact so-and-so to see if we can get it, get that changed. Hopefully I answered that question. Yeah.
All right, next one here, question from Fada. She'd like to know, I don't know Dust well, but the syntax seems similar to AngularJS. Is that somewhat correct?
It's somewhat correct. Angular goes a little bit further with a little bit more framework stuff because, Angular is really more of a framework. Dust is a templating language. I think if I remember right, Angular uses handlebars. I may be wrong on that. I haven't looked at Angular in a while, but actually it may not. But it uses another templating language. Dust is the templating language, so it's not really a framework it's per se itself. It's just a templating language. You can find it if you Google for LinkedIn Dust. You'll find the LinkedIn fork of it.
Thank you. Let's see here. Question from Simon. Any idea when Kraken will be released?
Yeah, so hopefully in the next couple of months. We've been kind of busy on getting so what we'll do is we'll release the smaller framework piece that's the scaffolding piece. It's a little bit like Yeoman, but it's a little bit different. It's not quite as complete as, doesn't do quite as much as Yeoman, but that's on purpose for us, what we're trying to do. All the production stuff, I don't have a path right now for any of that being open source because it's very specific to getting PayPal working. But I know that Yahoo had been working on the Cocktails project, which was supposed to bring a lot of the production side of things for Node out. But I'd also looked at this company, StrongLoop, to do this from an enterprise perspective. They're going to release a lot of stuff open source, and they'll have some things like monitoring tools that they'll sell. So I expect StrongLoop, and they've got all the right people involved, from the core Node guys. I expect to see some pretty good stuff out of them.
Thank you. Another question here from Brian. Were your developers already well-versed in the various JS libraries like Node, Dust, Backbone, _, or did they have to learn as they were developing?
So the first core set of developers were very, very experienced. Well, I'd say, okay, so Eric had worked for me at Netflix, and Eric, just all-around great developer. He had not used Node other than just a little bit of experimentation before that. So when he grabbed me and started creating the framework, it was probably his first time to look at it. But again, he was a really good developer. So our core guys were just some of the best guys that I could have actually hired. And then what we've done is we're rolling this out. We have Doug Crockford who works here too. So Doug has actually put together a class called Effective JavaScript. It's a 3-day class that takes people from, say, they have a Java background, takes them through learning JavaScript. And we're getting him to add asynchronous JavaScript as another part of that class. And I expect him to probably give some classes. We'll YouTube all that and put that out there. But yeah, it's going to be a challenge. That's our next big challenge, is really scaling it, because and so what we're doing on this wallet project is we're ensuring that we lay down the right design patterns for our coding, because what people will do, this is natural, they'll look at whatever we've got there as they start the other projects, and they'll copy some of that, hopefully not blindly, but some of that will happen. It's just the pressure of time. So we've got to create a path of least resistance that's at least good and scalable. And one of the ways we're doing that is to ensure that we do everything very modular, and we're using NPM internally so that we can install a module. Say we've got, say, Mayfly, for example, which is it's like our Memcache. It's our own version of that, and so a developer doesn't know that. They're just using the connects session on the request object in Node. But under the covers, we're using an NPM module that brings in the session management. So all these are just modules that get pulled in.
Super, thank you. A few more questions here. One from Hans, who'd like to know, do you support Oauth as part of the Kraken stack?
So we are actually we are using Oauth in our new authentication models in our platform team, and we are connecting through. Wow, the name just escaped me. I could get it back if somebody tweets me about it, I'll tweet about it. Now I'm forgetting the Node module we're using that interfaces that. So we're kind of agnostic to it, but we're using a Node module to hide that.
Super. Lots and lots of questions coming in. Folks, thank you very much. We're going to take as many as we have time for, and we're going to take one now from, let's take a look here, from Java Built, who's asking about many of the templating libraries fall apart under PayPal's unparalleled scaling issues, and few sites process as many transactions per hour as you guys do. If you had any comments about that.
Well, it turns out templating is one of the least, it's not, that's not really where the problem's at. Our problems at PayPal as far as speed or performance are in the services layer. Even on our previous stack with the C++ and XML, which was sometimes horrendous, a template could be as much as a meg in size and could do a lot of nesting. That's not really where our problem's been. So we've done a lot of performance testing. We did find out that the implementation of our Rhino script was doing some pretty atrocious things once we dug back under the covers and looked at what was happening. And we fixed those, and now we're not seeing, we don't see anything that concerns us. All over at PayPal.com, all the new experience you see out there are all running on Dust, and we're not experiencing any issues around that.
Thank you. A few folks asking about testing in a 5-day cadence. If you can talk a little bit about that and automated testing.
Yeah, so very, very good. So there's there's several kinds of testing. There's the user testing, and it can fall under qualitative or quantitative. Qualitative being that you're actually working with humans, in some kind of manner to understand them, and the quantitative being that you're collecting data about users and studying that. And Netflix was a king of quantitative. So with qualitative, we're doing usability studies. This is later in the stage. But we also have a larger process called the customer-driven innovation that allows us to, it gives us a lot of techniques and tools to go out and talk to users in their environment, in their setting, follow people home, find out how they're using the product or not able to use the product and learn from that. That weekly cadence was something we came up with for the lean UX. In practice, what's happened is when you're in that intense burst at the beginning, weekly is really good. Then you settle into every 2 or 3 weeks. And then what happens is once a product matures a little bit and you get more towards A/B testing or quantitative, you do less of those usability studies. But whenever you have new features or new ideas, you have a burst of that. So that cadence is not something you necessarily keep up all the time for all products. But it certainly, as you get closer to producing something that's got some radical new ideas or many approaches, you do that. Now, one thing you don't want to confuse with is, you can only learn so much in a qualitative study, so you have to get stuff out the door to users. And this is where we still are behind a little bit because the machinery's been so hard to crank. Now that we're just about to get all this unblocked, we'll be able to get product out a lot faster and do a lot more A/B testing. And there'll be the cases where we won't be doing as much lean UX. We'll have the same spirit and mindset. We're doing more A/B testing, so you have to balance the two.
Fantastic. And with that, we'll take one final question here from Andy, who'd like to know. He says, you showed that Rhino was used on the server side. Was this within a framework? Is that the one PayPal might open source of some sort? He's familiar with Rhino, but not necessarily with how to use it in a web framework.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny because the other day I mentioned to one of the guys that we found another use for this. So this Rhino script is not something we built. It's something that's been around in the Java community for a long time. We started with Netscape that built Rhino script, and probably it's about 15 years old, maybe 10 years old, something like that. And it just basically on the Java VM allows you to have a JavaScript engine running there. It's not the most efficient solution. It was a stopgap for us. What we'll probably eventually move to is once we have the node, we'll no longer need the Rhino script. That was just a bridging for us for the Java platform. Oracle's working on their project, and again, for some reason my brain's not working this morning and I can't think of the name, but I'll be glad to tweet it later. They're working on a project to have their own kind of Rhino script, but much more efficient. In essence, to create like a node-like thing in Java that allows asynchronous programming, evented I/O kind of programming, and so they're working on that project. So, but I was thinking that being able to use the various JavaScript templating languages on using Rhino script in the Java environment would be a nice open source project. There could be a way to kind of package that, but we haven't thought too much more beyond that. I'll be glad also, on Twitter, Bill W. Scott, you can tweet me your questions, and I'll, as I have time over the next few days, I'll get answers to you.
Super. And with that, folks, we're going to say a very big thank you to you, Bill, for presenting a really outstanding webcast for us all and for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us.
Well, I appreciate it. It was an awesome time.
Folks that attended, thank you so much for attending the webcast today, and we hope you benefited from it. And as we close out the program, we'd just like to say a very big thank you to PayPal for sponsoring today's event, and to let you all know, PayPal Developer, the group behind technology innovation at PayPal, has launched its global Battle Hack series for social good. Take your hackathon skills into a battle against other developers to become the representative of your city and country in the World Finals. Build innovative projects around the themes of social good, helping to solve the challenges that your city faces every day. The winner of each city will be flown out to San Francisco for the World Finals, where they'll represent their team, city, and country in the fight for the $100,000 grand prize. You can sign up now for your city, BattleHack at battlehack.org. We did push out that URL there. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun, folks, and you can meet lots of cool people there. So we do encourage you to take advantage of that. Bill, again, thank you so much. And folks, we did push out a URL to you and a code that can save you some money for the Fluent conference that O'Reilly has coming up at the end of this month. Bill is keynoting. He's going to be there. He's going to be live. So if you're at the conference, you can meet him, shake his hand, talk to him. And if you haven't got your tickets yet, still time to save a little bit of money with that code that we pushed out to you. So we look forward to seeing you all there. Again, thanks, Bill. Thank you, everyone. This will conclude our webcast today. Goodbye, everybody.